Hey class, so as promised, I'm uploading this video to help kind of walk you guys through a couple different things that we have on deck. The first thing I'm going to walk you through is this kind of genre inventory thing for Blog 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a peer-reviewed journal from my community, and we're going to try to figure out like what makes it actually work as a genre, like what are its components. And what I'll do is I'll kind of go through a little bit of the article, and we'll start to pull out some of the things that we notice in the same way that you would do for your articles. That way, when you get to your article, you can do the kind of similar strategies that I'm going to be showing you in the video. The other thing that we're going to be doing today is taking a look at the student sample 1. So we're going to actually walk through a really good example of what Project 2 in general is going to look like. So this is a little forward thinking, right? You're not really going to be concerned about a kind of completed Project 2 at this point, but it is coming up the next few weeks, and so it's good to have kind of an idea of where all of this stuff is building toward and what this actually looks like. Excuse me. Okay, so to start out, we're going to take a look at this article right here. Now, this is an article that I found on our Wayne State database. This is Project Muse is a database that we have, an article database that we have access to through the library. And so because I found it through the library and because I found it through like the research guides section, I know that this is a good article. I know that it's peer reviewed. I know that it's academic. And this is the same kind of thing that you should be paying attention to as well. So real quick, I'll tell you some of the things that will set you off to understand like what makes this peer reviewed, or how can I tell. So the best way to do it, obviously, is find it through the library. That's going to immediately set you up with good sources. The other thing that we're looking for is a clear title. If it doesn't have a title, it's probably a problem. An author that we could go look up and see what else this person has published. This is a scholar that's done a lot of this kind of thing, so I know that it's an expert in the field. And then down here, this is the actual journal. So this is the article, and this is the journal that it came in, right? Studies in English Literature, 1500 to 1900, volume 46, number 2, date, and these are the pages that this article appears in within this overall journal. Now, there's a couple things that I could do here if I wasn't sure. I could look up the author and I could look up the journal, and both of these things would tell me that this is a good source to look at. I'll know that this is an academic, this is a scholar, an expert in the field, and I'll know that this is a journal used by experts in the field. And obviously, Johns Hopkins University Press, I know this is a distinguished press. If I didn't know that, I could go look it up. So it should have all of these things. It should have a title, author, it should have the journal title, as well as the publisher. And these things will all alert you to whether or not it's a good source. Okay. So let's take a look at the actual article itself to figure out if we can pull some of the things out of it. Now, one of the things that I want to stress to you guys is as you're working through Project 2 is that we're not really concerned about what Andrew Fleck, for instance, is saying here. I'm not really concerned with the argument in this piece. What I'm thinking about is a little bit more meta than that. I'm thinking about the kind of bigger picture. What is going on here that's making this article an article? So this is something that I could apply to. Basically what we're looking for is a set of rules that Andrew Fleck is following that allows this to function as an article. And these set of rules can be followed by anyone else in the community. So it's not going to be specific to this one article. So for example, I could look at a bunch of different articles, and what I'll see is that all of these articles have a clear title and the author introduced at the beginning. So what I could say, let's just do this real quick. So let's make our little inventory list. So one of the first things that I notice is I notice the title and the author's at the top of the page, right? That's one of the first things that I would say. This is kind of a key marker for what makes this a genre. The other things I could talk about is it has page numbers and it has the date of the journal on here as well. So as we're coming down, what what we could do is instead of kind of reading this word for word, we're going to just try to get a feel for it. So like, what kind of language do we see? Are we seeing a lot of formal language, informal language? Are we seeing a lot of research, a lot of references to other sources, a lot of quotes? Basically, what do you see when you look at this thing? So one of the first things that I notice is it has footnotes here. So that's something I'm going to be looking out for, right? Is this going to be a common thing running throughout this? The other thing that I see is that we've got some quotes going on here and a longer quote down here. So that's something that we'd put into our genre inventory list. Oops. I can't type tonight, sorry. Clearly I can't type tonight. Okay, good. So I've got a lot of quotes. And then I would also kind of say what these quotes are about. So in this case, I would say these quotes are either from literature or from scholars dealing with literature, if I were to read that. So I could look at language. We've got pretty formal language. I don't see really kind of any colloquialisms or any kind of regular kind of talking language. So we just write formal. Formal language down here. I don't see any section headers, so I wouldn't put that, but some of you might have section headers. It might have introduction, research, whatever it is. What else do we see here? We've got more quotes. We've got kind of long descriptive paragraphs. I typed that one off screen so you guys couldn't see me mess it up if I did. Long descriptive paragraphs. What else? More quoting. We see kind of complex kind of sentence structure, so it's not just kind of short, choppy sentences. We've got kind of long descriptive sentences that kind of flow nicely together. So, long descriptive sentences. And what else do we see? And so that you're getting the point, though, is basically what you're going to be doing is you're going to be working through the article just like this. It's just kind of reading pieces of it and figuring out what stands out. And so far what we've noticed is it's got a clear title and author at the top of the page, a lot of quotes. We've got very formal language, long descriptive paragraphs, and long descriptive sentences. We would also want to identify the citation style. This one looks like it's MLA style, obviously, because it's literature. We've got, okay, so we do have some sections. So we've got section headers with, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth. And then an extensive note section that has descriptive notes about any of the things that we saw up here, as well as probably some bibliographic information as well. And so that's what I'm looking for your inventory. Just work through your article and see what you can find. Okay, so now, what I want to do is I want to take a look at the student sample then, so you guys can get a sense of what Project 2 looks like. So, as I said with the genre inventory, we're more focused on the article as like an object rather than the article as presenting an argument. And so what that means is I'm focused on the various components that make the article actually work, as opposed to what the author is trying to say. So remember, we're going to focus on the argument and what they're saying later, but for now we're just focused on what the thing looks like. And so before we dive in too deep, I want to just point out that we've got a brief introduction here, and then if you remember, we've got those 3 sections. We've got our, let me just zoom that in, identification section, and then we have our analysis section, and then we have a reflection. So let's take a look. Okay, so the introduction then is going to introduce the community that this article comes from, and it's going to give us kind of a brief introduction to what people are trying to do in that community, why they need to communicate, and what they're communicating, essentially. And so let's take a look at the identification section. So what we're going to be doing in this section is we're going to be doing exactly what we just saw for that article. We're going to be making essentially a genre inventory list for your articles. So one from the writing studies and then one for the article from your community. Because remember, our goal is to take those 2 articles, pull out the various components of them, and then compare them. Okay. So let's take a look. In order to identify the genre conventions used by an author to communicate with members of the community, it's important to understand how they differ between discourses. Comparing and contrasting the conventions used by authors in the supply chain community and the academic writing community exposes the tools that each author uses. So exactly that. This is our goal. We're going to compare these 2 articles. So we have an introduction of the first article, and this is something you should do. Make sure you're introducing the article and the author. And then this gives us a brief summary of the article. It's an article that explains the strategy for companies to increase, et cetera, et cetera. And then it gives us a quick discussion of who they think the audience for this is. And you could probably tell pretty quickly who the audience for your article is going to be. It's probably going to be other members of the community. because you're going to see a lot of the things that are specific to that community, like specific language and specific topics that only members of that community would really care about. So we've got a discussion of who it's meant for, the context, and so again, this is the kind of like the format of it. So it's written as a journal, so the format has to display those kind of things. And what does that mean? Like, what does a journal article look like? Okay, and so then here we move into the actual article itself. And so this author is talking about an abstract. This article, most scholarly articles contain an abstract. The abstract for this one is located on the top of the page. And so again, we're not really worried about what the abstract is saying. We're just worrying about the fact that it has an abstract and where it's located. So if I was looking at the article in my hand, what would I see on the very first page? I'd see the abstract on the top of the page. And then what it's providing. It's providing the purpose, methodology, findings, and values. So that's what the abstract should do in this community. And then we get a brief discussion of the topic. The topic clearly identified the discourse community which it appeals to. The title contains keywords. Efficiency is the goal. And so then when we're talking about some of these like specific details, like efficiency is the goal, you're going to want to use some quotes and evidence from the text itself, right? And so if you tell me, like, I can tell that the author's really worried about being as efficient and direct as possible with their language, then give me an example of what that looks like. So if you say the author uses really complex and kind of fun sentence structure, give me an example. Like, what are you talking about? What do you see that makes you think that? And so then, same thing, we're moving into kind of other components. We've got different headings that this author noticed. So for example, background, model development. So that gives us a list of all the headings that they see. And then how we have a discussion of the different sections and how long they are, how short they are, how they're grouped, how they're organized, what kind of voices it's written, is it active or passive, and give me an example of that and why you think that might be. And so then we move in and we do the exact same thing for the writing studies one, right? We work through the various components of the writing studies. So what you've got here at this point, once you reach this point in the essay, is you've got identification of components for two different articles with some examples from each one. So now your job is going to be to tell us what all of that stuff means when you look at it together. So the major conventions, this moves us into the analysis section. So this is all like gathering your tools, and this is all telling us what they all do. So the major conventions used by each of the authors in the genre represent the different goals for each community. So here again we return to the first article, shows the values placed on speed and efficiency, and then they tell us how they could tell this. It was presented in a simple manner, short sections, visual aids. These things tell us that they're worried about efficiency and communicating quickly. So then we have more discussion of how they tell this, or how they could tell this. The length of the sections, the use of images, all of this tells us that we need to be clear and fast. And then we move into the comparison with the writing article. So in this other article, there are no headings or images because academic writers in the community were more worried about conveying words through ideas through words and detail, and we don't need to be as timely as they do in the other community. We're not worried about something happening within a certain period of time, right? And so we don't see these same kind of strategies that we do in, say, the global supply, right? And so that's really your goal, right? Is to tell me what the things that you identified tell you about the community. So for example, the short sections and visual aids tell me that this community wants to communicate really quickly, whereas this one doesn't. So you're telling us like what all these things that you identified tell us about the community. So finally, when you get to the reflection section, you can just talk about like what you've learned about genre in general. So like what you've learned about genre in your community, what you've learned about the idea of genre, whatever it is that you've learned from this project. And so that's the goal, is you're pulling things out of the articles that you think tell you something about your community, and then you're telling me what they tell you about the community and how they relate to the writing community, and then reflecting on your process. So guys, I hope this helped. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I will be in touch soon.